I'm an associate professor and a state level field specialist with OSU Extension. I would like to thank the Ohio State University Health Plan webinars. But my hope for today is that many of you will gain additional insights and perspectives on the cost of healthy foods. So a perception exists among many Americans, and these are consumers from a wide range of income levels, members of the media, politicians, policymakers, public health professionals, that healthy foods, particularly fresh produce, are more expensive than nutritionally empty, heavily processed foods. And to be sure, there are plenty of expensive healthy foods out there. But along with the perception maybe comes the assumption that there are no inexpensive healthy foods. And then we get that is associated with the lack of nutritious food, eating a lot of fast food, and experiencing obesity. So I'm going to be sharing some ideas and concepts today based on my experience of eating a healthy $4.50 a day. My household budget has been $1.50 per meal per person since January 2018. I have a copy of every grocery receipt, a photo of every grocery purchase, and a photo of every meal since then. And I'll just be sharing a few of those with you. I'll also be sharing some information from the USDA Thrifty Food Plan reevaluation that was done last year, and other analyses based on large national level data sets. So I'd like to start out with a few disclaimers. While I studied nutrition in my undergraduate and graduate level coursework, and I've worked in health promotion and public health for well over 20 years, I'm not a registered dietitian, and I do not provide nutritional advice. I absolutely recognize that there are a lot of factors and many barriers related to trying to eat a healthy diet, and I do not intend to downplay or dismiss these barriers in any way. And then finally, a healthy diet on $4.50 a day in Columbus, Ohio may not be practical or easy, but in terms of the cost of purchasing the food, it was absolutely possible from 2018 to 2022. And the disclaimer is that this budget will need to increase due to recent inflation. So I want to acknowledge that there are a lot of views about the two terms in the title of this presentation. So healthy foods and too expensive. For simplicity, when we talk about healthy food, we'll start with MyPlate, and I encourage you to go to myplate.com for more information. But essentially, that's that half your plate should be fruits and vegetables, and the other half whole grains and good quality protein. And then I follow the 3 key dietary principles from the Dietary Guidelines for Americans. So that's trying to meet nutritional needs primarily from nutrient-dense foods and beverages, choosing a variety of options from each food group, and paying particular attention to portion size. Then when we get to this is it too expensive? Expensive is a very subjective term, and something can be expensive relative to other items, whether it's similar or different items, can be expensive relative to the resources one has to spend, and certainly can be expensive based on the perceived value. So in terms of food, what is that food's function, or taste, or nutritional value, or maybe sustainability value, or convenience? So instead of using the word expensive, I'm going to try to focus instead on a per meal or per serving cost. So behaviors are very difficult to change, and changing what we eat can be one of the most difficult changes to make. So I want to give you a little background on how it is I got to be on this very low household food budget. And that's back in 2014, there was a local organization that was sponsoring what's called the SNAP Challenge. So the idea there is they were encouraging people to eat for a week on $1.50 a meal. So roughly what someone who's receiving food stamps or, SNAP, the Supplemental Nutrition Assistance Program dollars. And so I did that for 6 days, planned for 18 meals. These are the foods that I purchased, totaling $26.61. The guidance from the organization was to not use any of the foods we had in our kitchen and not use any outside foods or foods we were given free. So this was one day's food. So starting from scratch was very challenging. And the meals that I ate during that challenge period were simple and sparse, but they were adequate. And what stood out to me during that challenge was that I could prepare a pretty good sized plate of food for dinner. But whereas I would have routinely reached for a second helping, it occurred to me that if I made a second helping that night, that I would not have any dinner the next night. Right? That's how low I was on foods that week. So then the years went by, and I continued to hear people say to me, many people from different backgrounds, of course, people on a limited budget lack nutritious food, eat a lot of fast food, experience obesity. Healthy food is expensive. And I kept thinking back about the SNAP challenge, and thought, people have to live on this very low budget, and there's got to be more to the story. So I decided to try it again. And in early 2018, I planned to start, my first purchase was for 15 days, not for 6. So it was $66, not $26. That allowed me to purchase a bigger range of foods, more ingredients. And this is the actual photo I took halfway through. I was very encouraged that I still had more than half the food left. Knew I was going to make it. But here, this is the photo that was the most encouraging, that after consuming the 45 meals, I had inventory, right? I still had food in my kitchen. I had oats and rice and tortillas and ingredients to make granola. And I knew that the next purchase was going to be easier because I had these things to work with. And what I found was that the subsequent weeks also got easier because I just got more familiar with what foods could offer the most value for what I ate in my diet and my particular meal pattern. So I want to take a minute just to address how I track the per meal cost of my foods. Before I go grocery shopping, I always think about how many meals will this purchase provide. So let's say I plan to eat 20 meals at home with that grocery purchase. So 20 times $1.50 would be $30. And then let's say I finish shopping, I get to the checkout, and I realize that my foods add up to about $33. I have two choices. I can put $3 worth of food back, or I can increase my target level. And let's say I increase it to 22 meals. That means I'm going to keep track of the meals that are prepared and consumed. And we won't go shopping again at all until all 22 meals are served and consumed. So regardless of what we run out of or run low on, and that way I can be confident in the per meal cost. Here's an example of a later grocery purchase. This $40.50 provided, along with the inventory in my kitchen, provided 27 meals before I went shopping again. Here's another example, and I want to note here it says that we, 2 people, have eaten delicious balanced meals on an average of $1.50 per meal per day. When I started this in 2018, the second time around, I said to my husband, okay, I'm gonna do $1.50 a meal. I'm gonna do it long term, maybe indefinitely. Do you want to do it with me? And you can imagine like what your response might be, or what the response from someone in your household might be. And it was a resounding no way. So I cleared some space in the cupboard and the refrigerator and freezer, and for months we did separate shopping trips. I kept a separate supply of food. We cooked separately. But what happened was that I would be preparing meals and he would say, wow, that really looks good, or wow, that smells good. And I'd say, well, I can make a second serving. I can count it as 2 of my servings. And actually that happened with, that increased so much in number and frequency that after about 4 or 5 months, it just became logical that we would do it as a household, and both of us would be doing the $1.50 per meal. So here are a couple more grocery purchases. I want you to take a look at, you can see there's a lot of healthy food here. There's fresh fruits and vegetables, frozen fruits and vegetables, milk, cheeses, other dairies, proteins, chicken breast, bratwurst, pepperoni, occasionally put bacon in the purchase, eggs, also then whole grain oats, whole grain cereals, whole grain breads, and some miscellaneous items, which include sauces, condiments, coffees and teas fit into the miscellaneous category, as well as any pre-prepared items, but those we don't purchase very often. Here's another way of looking at the building blocks for my purchases, and that is by category. And what you can see here is that there are a lot of items purchased that are either not processed or very minimal and would have very few additives. If you can notice that a number of the things listed here have parentheses after with percents noted. And what that is the percent of added sodium and added sugars. And so to give you an example, what that works out to is, like, say I made a big pot of stir-fried vegetables, and I start with, good, fresh, unprocessed vegetables, and add a couple of servings of a stir-fry sauce. I'm only adding about 10% of the daily allotment of sodium and sugar. So that meal is going to stay way below the recommended limitations. And those are 2 areas where Americans really need to cut back and often exceed the recommended levels. Another thing I can tell you about my experience in doing this $1.50 a meal is that for the first year, I lost about a half a pound a week for about the full first year, and then my weight kind of leveled off. So I didn't set out to lose weight. That is not why I made these dietary changes. But I lost 22 pounds in the first year, and for me, it turned out that eating less food costs less money, and eating less food puts on less weight. So it really was a win-win. As I said, we've got photos of all of our meals. Here's just a snapshot to show you. We eat what foods that many people eat. We eat plated meals. Again, it's just 1 serving, but these are very generous helpings. So, eggs and toast and avocado toast and all kinds of good things for breakfast, soups and salads and chilies and pastas and pizzas, and for lunches and dinner, French toast, again, whole grain cereals, salads, burritos, quesadillas. And I do get a lot of questions about the time, the time requirements, and doesn't this add a lot of time? And I don't have time to do that. And I'll just say that I have experienced that there's actually been a lot of time trade-offs. And to give you an example, I did add 10 minutes of travel time each direction to get to a mid-sized discount grocery store versus the big box grocery store, but it took my shopping time was cut in half. So it just balanced out. So that's just a brief idea of how I did a $1.50 a meal budget and our 1 household case study. And now I want to talk about the estimated cost of a healthy diet on a national level. So the USDA estimates the cost of a nutritious diet across four price points, and they're listed here. That's the Thrifty meal plan, the low cost, the moderate cost, and the liberal food plan. These can be customized for the individuals in your household and their particular nutritional needs. So whether there's one adult and a young child, or two adults and four teenagers, that can be adjusted. But when we talk about the Thrifty food plan in general, there's a reference Thrifty food plan, and that represents the cost to purchase groceries to provide a healthy diet for a family of four, and that's an adult male and an adult female between the ages of 20 and 50, and two children, one between the ages of 6 and 8, and one between the ages of 9 and 11. The Thrifty food plan was totally reevaluated last year. They issued the report in the summer of 2021. It's worth taking a look at the new Thrifty food plan and the reevaluation, the calculations that were made. The whole process was based on a lot of input from consumers, Americans, advocacy groups, and they looked at this was the first reassessment in over 40 years that used the actual cost of food rather than just adjusting up for inflation. So they took a fresh look at what foods do Americans like to eat? What do they routinely purchase? In what ways are they making their meals? And they accounted for things like differences in individual preferences and cultural preferences. And one of the goals of this reevaluation was to come up with what's called market baskets. So these are recommendations of, if you had a set amount to purchase each week, what would go in your shopping cart. I do want to point out that this very lowest, thriftiest level, the Thrifty food plan, achieving a healthy diet at this really low cost does require some planning and preparation for at-home consumption. I certainly have found that in my really low budget. It does not, however, assume that all foods are prepared from scratch. There are many more convenience forms included in this version of the Thrifty food plan. And it does, as I said, allow flexibility in each of the categories based on individual and cultural preferences. The Thrifty food plan reevaluation is key. It's very important because, as you can see here, the Thrifty food plan actually defines the food assistance allotments that are provided. But when we look at the results of the reevaluation, it actually resulted in food stamp benefits. Those were increased last fall. The cost of the Thrifty food plan for the reference family of four at last year's prices, so June 2021 prices, was $835 a month. So that was based on $192.84, determined that's what grocery purchase that's the lowest that a grocery purchase could be to provide foods to feed the members of that reference family of four. So you could divide that out by number of meals. It actually comes to $2.29 per meal on average. And I say average because actually each meal is costed out, or each allotment is costed out differently for the whether it's the adult's nutritional needs or the child's. Let's take a look at the market basket and what is recommended, and how would you divide out a purchase. So say you're a family of four and you've got $193 to spend each week. So within the Thrifty food plan, the USDA recommends, they break down the recommended spending into 6 categories, and those are listed here. And then actually, if you go to the Thrifty food plan report, there are specific detailed breakdowns within each of these categories. So under vegetables, for example, it'll show like of the different types of vegetables and vegetable color groups, the recommended amount that you would spend on each of those. But let's just look at these 6 categories in general. So you go to the grocery store, you have $193 to spend each week. That's allowing $46 for vegetables, about $27 for fruit each week. So that's a lot of fruits and vegetables. $30 for grains, about $28 for dairy products, $47 for protein foods. So this is, meats, eggs, plant-based proteins. And finally, about $14 in miscellaneous, which we'll get back to. But I'd like you all to take a mental note of the percentages on the right. So the percentages can apply to any amount that you typically spend in your weekly shopping trip. So in general, they recommend spending about 25% of your grocery purchase would be on protein food and about 25% on vegetables. Then roughly about 15% in the dairy category, 15 in the fruits, 15 in the grains, and then about 7 or 8 in that miscellaneous. So let's go back to my household example. Here is my latest grocery purchase. And if you think about, we eat 3 meals a day, 7 days a week, that's 21 meals. Times 2 people, that's 42 meals. Times $1.50 would be $63. So my purchase, and this was just, these foods were purchased on Sunday. This is $62.93. And you can see that the breakdown is very similar to what that national level calculation came out to, that vegetables and protein came out to about a quarter of the cost. The fruits, the dairy group, and the grains each came out to roughly 15% of the purchase price. And then there was that miscellaneous category. And you can see down in the lower right, that's some tikka masala sauce and a package of 6 dark chocolate candy bars. So I said we'd go back and revisit the market basket, the miscellaneous portion. This can be the most challenging when you're shifting to the Thrifty food plan. Out of the 192, there's only 14 in the miscellaneous category. $3.71 for all pre-prepared items, soups, frozen entrees, pizzas, coffees and tea fall into this category, fats and oils, which can have a high per serving cost, condiments, sauces, and then the sweet treats, all of those, there's just $1.39 out of the 192 allotted for sodas, fruit drinks, ice cream, cookies, and candy bars. But remember, the idea here is that the 192 provide the lowest cost healthy foods. Certainly you could spend beyond the 192 on those other treats. And I know we just have a few minutes left, so I won't go into this in detail, but I do track the cost of the foods I usually buy over time. The reason I think I've been able to stick with $1.50 per meal for so long is that prices stayed so stable, or even a few went down between when I started and mid-2020, where you see the really sharp increases are within the last year. And consumer price index, the estimate is that at-home food prices are predicted to increase between 10 and 11% overall. This year, they are predicting a leveling off for the rest of the year. So in summer last year, the USDA released the results of a survey that they did of people who actually receive SNAP assistance. And 88% said that they face challenges to getting a healthy diet, and 61% reported that the cost of healthy foods are a real barrier to them. That's so interesting to me, because that says that actually 4 in 10 did not. And then on the right is that, just some of those many other barriers that we know that people face, and may actually face numerous of these simultaneously. Everything from time to prepare the meal to having storage facilities and cooking skills. And then, of course, like things like physical disabilities and other limitations. So I just want to finish with a couple of questions for you. And the first is, recognizing that if household food resources are spent first on healthy foods, that they can provide a healthy diet at, let's say, $48 a week, which is that $2.29 per meal average for the reference Thrifty Food Plan reference family. So recognizing that is possible, what would be your target per meal cost? Would you want to start at the $2.29, or maybe you'd want to start at $3 per meal, or $4, or even a different amount? Choose what works for your household. And then, as Carolyn said, we'd really like to hear what you're interested in learning more about during these webinars. And so I will launch the poll. And if you can seeing